This talk is about the optimal matchmaking strategy in two-sided marketplaces. By two-sided marketplaces, I refer to platforms such as Airbnb, Yelp, Thumbtack, Upwork, which help customers find service providers at good prices. I'll be studying the best way for these platforms to organize their search and matching feature so as to help the market find a good matching efficiently. Here's the outline of the talk. I'll first overview the research question and a summary of insights before proceeding to the model and results. The research question is, how can an online platform best help customers find suitable service providers at good prices? Among existing platforms, there are 4 matchmaking strategies that are observed. Some two-sided marketplaces have customers search for suitable providers. Examples include Airbnb, Google Local Services, and House. Let's take a look at House. Here, I search for, in Los Angeles, California, kitchen and bathroom remodelers, and I find 1,482 professionals. I can browse their profiles, see pictures and reviews, and contact the ones that I prefer. In other platforms, providers search for customers who post job requests. Examples include Amazon Mechanical Turk, Bark, and Porsche. Let's take a look at Bark. Here, I want kitchen installation and remodeling, putting a zip code and search. Then, instead of showing me listings of providers, I'm asked a bunch of questions. What kind of property is this for? Does the existing kitchen need to be removed? What work needs to be done? Are there any cabinetry services needed? And after this, on the platform, there's a job request that's initiated, and providers can search through the list of job requests and contact me if they're interested. Other platforms allow both sides of the market to search for partners and initiate contact. Examples include Care.com, Upwork, and Yelp. Let's take a look at Yelp. On Yelp, customers can search for providers. Here I typed kitchen remodel and there's many results. Let's look at the first one, MD1M custom remodeling. Here, I can request a virtual consultation through the platform. And when I do this, Yelp asks me a bunch of questions just like what Bark did. What best describes this project? What work is needed? What is the scope? What location? When do you require this? Anything else? Location, as well as photos. And here, by default, Yelp checks this get competing quotes. And what's going on is that if I click send request, Yelp creates a job request for me that other providers whom I haven't contacted can look at and initiate contact with me. So having this feature of get competing quotes essentially makes Yelp a platform in which both sides can search for partners. Customers can search for providers, and providers can look through job requests and contact customers. Other platforms have centralized matching in which the platform recommends a limited number of suitable providers to each customer. Examples include Amazon Home Services, Angie, HomeAdvisor, TaskRabbit, Thumbtack, and Uber and Lyft. Let's take a look at Thumbtack. Here I look at kitchen remodel. And instead of giving me 1,500 like on House, the platform selects just 8 kitchen remodel contractor based on my specifications on the left. And for other search terms like handyman, the platform also recommends some prices. So in these platforms, the platform takes a more proactive role in limiting my options as well as steers the market towards a good match. The contributions of this paper is in deriving suitable market conditions for each of the 4 matchmaking strategy above. In other words, for what kind of market is each strategy suitable? Second, I established near-optimality of each strategy using information theory for suitable markets. In other words, I'll be able to show that for these suitable markets, this strategy is optimal among all possible way of matchmaking, not only the 4 listed above. And this is based on information theory. Here's the summary of insights. The analysis yields that what drives matchmaking performance are 2 parameters. On the horizontal axis, this corresponds to the degree that customer preferences are easy to describe or satisfy. The vertical axis corresponds to the degree that provider preferences are easy to describe or satisfy. Let me illustrate these terms using some examples. Consider the market for short-term rentals, such as on Airbnb. Here, provider preferences are easy to describe or satisfy, because if I'm an Airbnb host, I can easily describe which days are available, and I'm not that picky over customers as long as they're clean and will pay. Customers, on the other hand, may have very idiosyncratic preferences on where exactly they want to live. In the market for lawn care, customer preferences are easy to describe or satisfy, because if I want someone to mow my lawn each week, I'm not that picky as long as you get the job done at a reasonable price. But providers may be somewhat picky because they have a preference for scheduling nearby houses so that they don't have to travel so much. If I can do 3 houses in the same neighborhood on Tuesday morning, that saves a lot of cost. In the market for childcare providers, both sides may have picky idiosyncratic preferences on whom they prefer. Families care a lot about who exactly takes care of their children, and nannies also have preferences for families. In the market for furniture assembly, both customer and provider preferences are easy to describe or satisfy. If I want to assemble some IKEA furniture, I can easily describe which exact furniture I want, and providers are experienced. They know where they're getting into, and they can provide similar costs, similar prices for similar requests. Now, the analysis shows that the near optimal matchmaking strategy is based on these same axes. When provider preferences are easy to describe or satisfy, I'll show that customers searching for providers is a near optimal strategy. When customer preferences are easy to describe or satisfy, providers search is near optimal. When neither side is easy to describe or satisfy, both sides search is near optimal. And when both sides are easy to describe or satisfy, centralized matching is a near optimal strategy. Let me go into the model in which these insights are shown. There are 2 aspects of the model. One is the assignment game with incomplete information. The second is communication complexity of epsilon stable outcomes. Let me define these terms. The model is based on the classical assignment game of Shapley-Shubrick 1971, which is a model of matching with transfers that's very well studied. I'll first describe the classical model before describing what's new. In the classical assignment game, there's a set of customers and a set of providers. Each agent is interested in matching with at most 1 partner. So without loss of generality, we can consider the cardinality of these sets to be equal, because we can always create dummy customers or providers representing being unmatched. The surplus of a match between a customer and a provider is equal to the benefit received by the customer minus the cost incurred by the provider. This surplus is divided among customers and providers as follows. The customer surplus U is equal to the benefit received minus the price paid to the provider. The provider surplus is equal to the payment received minus the cost incurred. All this is in the classical assignment game. What's new in this paper is the incomplete information, in which I assume that only the customer knows her benefit and only the provider knows his costs. These benefits and costs are drawn independently from certain commonly known distributions that can be heterogeneous across IJ pairs. These distributions can be interpreted as follows: that the market believes on preferences conditional on the responses to platform questionnaires. As shown at the beginning, platforms typically collect some information about what kind of service you're looking for, who you are. And this information can be, I'll describe it as the easy to describe information. And conditional on the easy to describe information, I have some beliefs. So whatever uncertainty is in this distribution corresponds to the hard to describe idiosyncratic preferences. The market is specified by the set of agents as well as these preference distributions, which again correspond to the hard to describe components of preferences. An ideal matchmaking outcome is as follows. An epsilon stable outcome is defined to be a matching X as well as a vector of payments of how much each matched customer pays the matched provider. This matching and payments induce the surpluses, the customer surplus U, the provider surplus V's, satisfying the following. The first condition, no epsilon blocking pair, says that no pair of agents will benefit much by leaving the platform and matching on their own. On the left-hand side, UI plus VJ, that's what they currently get, the surplus. And if we give them epsilon each, that must be greater than or equal to what they can get on their own if they leave the platform and match on their own. Individual rationality just says that everyone has done negative surplus, so they're willing to participate. One can show that having epsilon stable outcomes attain certain benefits for the platform. The first one is that an average surplus per agent in any epsilon stable outcome is within epsilon of the full information maximum. So a platform that guarantees epsilon stable outcomes is guaranteeing high social surplus. A rival platform also will not be able to steal users by matching them better, because if I already have an epsilon stable outcome and you try to steal a pair of agents, those pair of agents will not be able to obtain much utility by matching on their own versus currently provided by the platform. Without loss of generality, we can assume that the benefit and cost are between 0 and 1, because this gives epsilon a scale. We can always scale things multiplicatively so that this is the case. The research question then is how to facilitate an epsilon stable outcome with minimum communication. Here, communication is a proxy for the hassle of matchmaking, the back and forth communication needed before finding a good match. To study this, I define a matchmaking protocol, which is a precise model of how agents communicate their private information with one another and yield an epsilon stable outcome. I'll keep track of the amount of communication needed. A matchmaking protocol can be interpreted as the combination of the platform design as well as agent behavior. For now, I will assume that agents behave truthfully. They will communicate their true private information. The paper later shows that they have little incentives to deviate. Now, let me describe the results. Again, the contributions of this paper are deriving suitable market conditions for each matchmaking strategy, as well as to establish near optimality based on information theory. Here's the summary of insights slide from before. I'll start by defining these parameters di and dj that correspond to these axes. The mathematical definition is given here. Let me parse this for you. dj is high, meaning provider preferences are easy to describe or satisfy if the provider's cost is close to the lowest support underbar Cij with sufficient probability. Why is this the case? When preferences are easy to describe, that means the platform questionnaire already captures most of provider preferences. So since the cost distribution corresponds to the hard to describe information, the support is narrow. So this underbar Cij is a good estimate. When preferences are easy to satisfy, that means that the cost is low for many customers. Either of these cases make DJ high. Similarly, DI is high if customer preferences are easy to describe, meaning that the upper bar BIJ is a good estimate. And easy to satisfy means that BIJ is high for many providers. In either case, DI is high. Now, let me go into this chart. First, let me describe why customer search is a suitable strategy when DJ is high. I need to give a precise model for customer search in order to study this question. And here's this matchmaking protocol corresponding to customer search. We first initialize certain quantities. The V hat is the surplus required by provider J. And the C hat is the customer's estimate of provider's cost. Note that provider cost is privately known to the provider, so customers don't know the exact cost upfront, but they have an estimate here that is based on the lowest support, meaning that they're optimistic that providers can serve them cheaply. In the second step, customers contact providers in decreasing order of estimated surplus, which is the benefit minus the surplus required by the provider minus the estimated cost. If the provider's real cost is less or equal to this estimated cost, then provider J is tentatively matched to the customer at this price based on these estimates. And the surplus required to win over provider J increments by epsilon. In other words, there's a bidding going on. If one customer is willing to pay a profit of $10 to this provider, the next customer that wants to take this provider's service better pay more to the provider. If the provider's actual cost is higher than the customer's initial estimate, then the provider communicates the actual cost to the customer who updates her estimate. So in each case, each iteration of step 2, either the surplus of the provider is increasing or the customer is getting better information. And let's illustrate this below. Here, we have 4 customers and 4 providers. Initially, these surplus estimates are all 0, and these are bid up as customers contact providers. An arrow indicates the customer contacts provider. So customer 1 contacts provider A, whether the provider is willing to provide service at a certain cost. And the provider updates, provider says, no, my cost is actually much higher. Here's the revised estimate. Then the customer may move on to another provider. And here, the color changes. This corresponds to a new tentative match. Here, the provider is willing to provide at this cost. And now the surplus for this provider is increments by epsilon, meaning the next customer who wants to take this provider away from customer 1 needs to pay at least epsilon more. Here, again, customer 2 contacts different provider, finds one who's willing to serve at her estimate. And here, customer 3 pays more profit to the provider. So provider A dumps customer 2 and now is matched to customer 3. And eventually, these provider surpluses are bid up until the market discovers these are the right price premiums charged by providers based on their popularity, and this is the final match. The proposition is that the above always terminates in an epsilon stable outcome. With high probability, the number of interactions per customer, an interaction is each iteration of step 2 where a customer contacts a provider. This is on the order of 1 over DJ. So if DJ is 10, each customer, if DJ is 0.1, each customer contacts on average at most 10 providers. The intuition is that each contacted provider can serve at this low cost with probability at least DJ by definition. So the expected number of contacts before finding a good provider whom the customer both prefers as well as able to serve at this reasonable cost estimate is the number of contacts is at most 1 over dj. Symmetrically, we can show that provider search is suitable when DI is high. Now, let me explain why both side search is helpful when both DI and DJ are very low. Here, let me define both side search. The first step is similar to before, except these customer cost estimates now are based on this other threshold rather than the lower support. So customers are not initially that optimistic about cheap prices. In this new step, step 2, providers contact customers for whom their cost is lower than this threshold, and the customer updates their cost estimate. Think of this as providers proactively contacting customers with special deals. Now, customers contact providers exactly as before. Here's an example in which the benefit is high and the cost is low with very small probability. So DI and DJ are very low. If you work through this example and count the number of interactions per customer, meaning number of times customer and providers have to contact one another. In customer search, on average, customers have to contact a constant fraction of providers in search of someone who can serve at this very low cost. And providers may contact many customers in search of someone who has a very high benefit. And if we do both side search, the people with very high benefit or low cost first reveal their preferences, and then the market can converge much more quickly. The number of interactions is order 1 rather than order n. And in general, for any market, the above always yields an epsilon stable outcome. Under suitable choice of this threshold z, with high probability, the number of interactions per customer is on the order square root n. You can consider this z as the platform's a price that the platform makes salient. And if people have this initial belief of the price, then providers will naturally contact customers for whom they can serve cheaply. And under a suitable salient price z, we have this bound that does not depend on DI or DJ. So this is still a good bound if DI and DJ are extremely low. The paper also described why centralized matching is suitable when both customer and provider preferences are easy to describe. The intuition is simple. If neither side cares that much whom they are matched to, the platform can just randomly recommend some suitable matches and there will be a good matching from there. Next, let me explain what I mean by near optimal. And this is to establish near optimality based on information theory. The question is, for a given class of markets, in the worst case, how many bits of communication per agent is needed to achieve an epsilon stable outcome with high probability? And in this table, I classify markets based on this parameter dj, which is the degree that provider preferences are easy to describe or satisfy. When dj is very high, that's one class. When dj is moderately high, that's another class. And all markets is the third class. The lower bound here corresponds to there's a worst case market in this class for which any system of matchmaking requires logarithmic bits of communication per agent in order to reach an epsilon stable outcome with high probability. And this is matched up to a constant factor by customer search. In the second row, the lower bound is order 1 over dj, and this is matched by up to a logarithmic factor by customer search. And in this third market, in which maybe both customer and providers are have very low, this DI and DJ are very low. They're both hard to describe and satisfy the preferences. The lower bound is order square root n, and this is matched up to a logarithmic factor by both sides search. The paper also has a similar result for centralized matching that I will not describe right now. But let me give some intuition on this construction of the lower bounds. Here's a construction of the lower bound. Here's a market in which the benefit is high with a probability DI, and cost is low with probability DJ, and DI times DJ is very small. In this market, the proposition is that any matchmaking protocol, any system of matchmaking that yields an epsilon stable outcome with 99% probability requires at least order 1 over DJ bits of communication per agent. The proof is based on using tools in information theory like entropy and mutual information. But the intuition is that in expectation, each agent has one profitable partner with high benefit and low cost. But each customer needs to contact 1 over DJ providers in expectation before finding one who reciprocates interest. Similarly, each provider needs to contact 1 over DI customers. And if you work it out, the number of contacts per agent is at least 1 over DJ. The contributions, again, is to derive suitable market conditions for each matchmaking strategy and to establish for these suitable markets that the matchmaking strategy is in fact near optimal out of all possible systems of matchmaking. The full paper is available on SSRN, and it extends the analysis to strategic agents, correlated preferences, many-to-one matching, dynamic arrival of customers, and an alternative model without transfer payments. So the insights are robust. Please contact me if you have any thoughts, and I welcome your feedback.